È un video essay che parla di Spielberg.
Ok.
Ah no, però è Jurassic Park, perché lui nel periodo in cui fece uscire nel periodo in cui girava Schindler'S List,
Ok.
lavorava agli effetti speciali di Jurassic Park.
Ah, ok, ce l'aveva già girato e lo stava
Esatto, e sono usciti
editando.
praticamente nello stesso anno quei due film. E c'è un video essay bellissimo su sta cosa che magari dopo ci spariamo.
Ma cazzo, comunque particolare, cioè nel senso, ok, stiamo parlando di Spielberg, però abbastanza peculiare come scelta il fatto che un regista faccia uscire nello stesso anno Jurassic Park e Schindler's List.
No, aspetta, mo ci vediamo sto video essay perché in realtà non è stata proprio una scelta.
Jurassic Park grossed nearly $1 billion worldwide.
The #1 film of all time.
It was the most exciting film I've ever seen.
I think Schindler's List is the best film I've ever made.
I'm watching a maestro, a master storyteller at the height of his craft.
Do you know he made Jurassic Park and Schindler's List in the same year? In the same year?
How do you do that? How do you separate them all? It was horrendous, troubling, and terrifying at times. I didn't want to be doing Jurassic Park any longer. There were days for me that were so unbearable. I didn't want to do the movie anymore.
November 30th, 1992. After 98 days of shooting, Jurassic Park wraps on stage 12 at Warner Bros. Studios. But we'll come back here.
You know, I'm thinking about doing a story about a genetically engineered dinosaur.
It's like the perfect place to take.
It's 1990, and author Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park is flying off shelves.
The latest thriller by author Michael Crichton.
A friend of Spielberg's, the rights to Jurassic Park were never going to anyone else.
And I said, please, let me be the first person to read the novel. He said, if you direct it, it's yours.
Stephen snapped it up.
One of my first longest words was triceratops. The second I read his book, I realized that we weren't dealing with monsters.
When dinosaurs ruled the earth.
Wouldn't it be great to run into a dinosaur and meet up with one without being eaten by it?
Quindi comunque c'è questa roba che lui è super appassionato di dinosauri, che tra l'altro
Certo.
anche nel film, non so, la sua infanzia un po' emerge, ma anche in E.T., mi ricordo che in E.T. c'è una scena in cui stanno tutti queste statuine di dinosauri e poi dietro c'è tipo l'armadio con E.T. nell'armadio. Cioè in generale il tema è che qua si vanno a fondere due robe enormi che riguardano comunque entrambe le sue origini e la sua infanzia, che sono i dinosauri e poi ora vediamo l'olocausto. E quindi diventa una roba folle per un regista che molti considerano un regista pop che non ha grandi profondità e grandi temi. In realtà cioè, secondo me in questo video essay, ma in generale in questo momento della sua carriera, emerge poi effettivamente il lavoro del regista, che da una parte è sognatore, creatore di universi, e dall'altra parte invece è una persona che deve anche approfondire l'inferno, il dramma umano
Il suo, e poi appunto, cioè, parlando di due cose, una così individuale, una così collettiva, cioè ti rendi conto anche di come interfacciarsi con questo doppio livello sia un lavoro.
Ma è collettivo anche la passione per i dinosauri, perché è tipica di quella generazione lì,
certo.
che, a differenza di quella di Quaron, che è un po' più legata magari allo spazio, cioè secondo me ci si divide un po' nel spazio, dinosauri come passione per i ragazzini
Certo.
americani,
Come declinazioni
di
della
quell'epoca.
fantascienza.
Infatti Jurassic Park è un mega successo, perché ovviamente va a cogliere in pieno questa roba qui.
2 years later, Jurassic Park was well underway. In fact, the movie enjoys a smooth production, wrapping under schedule and budget.
It was all so new for us.
The actors certainly did their jobs, and they believed who they were, and that's all an audience needs, is to believe that the characters are believing in themselves.
So when shooting wrapped in late 92, many were able to put Jurassic behind them. But for Steven Spielberg, there was a long way to go.
If we were going to have dinosaurs in this movie, they would have to look for me as real as though I were watching a National Geographic special on
Sì, tra
television.
l'altro qua
It didn't look
praticamente inventano la CGI con Jurassic Park, cioè sono i primi, cioè i dinosauri di Jurassic Park sono sia animatronics sia completamente generati dal computer, tipo quando vedono quello enorme nella foresta, e quello è il primo esempio di computer grafica, cioè di immagine completamente generata dal computer, almeno cioè una parte di esso, con un'animazione. Che altrimenti non era
as real as a camera can photograph an elephant today, and I didn't want to do it.
It's the big question. How do we turn these words on the page to real, breathing dinosaurs?
How we were going to get the dinosaurs to run was always going to be the old-fashioned way, through stop-motion animation. And then one day I got a call from Dennis Murin at ILM, and Dennis said that he thought that he could pull off a full-size dinosaur that would be authentic to the eye.
With stop motion, Steven had the best in the world. Trying something new like this was a major risk, but Steven had a long post-production ahead of him. He had to try.
Then we decided, okay, let's go ahead and do a real shot.
Beverly Hills, 1980. An author named
Thomas Keneally leaves his book signing and he goes in search of a new briefcase.
He finds a store on South Beverly Drive where
one survivor living here in Los Angeles, a leather goods merchant named Poldek Pfefferberg,
was selling briefcases.
Poldek, a Schindler'S survivor,
insisted on telling anybody who would listen about the man who had saved his life.
He walks into Poldek Pfefferberg's store and he asks Thomas what he did for a living. I'm a writer, answered Thomas.
Poldek responded with one thing. I have the best story of the century. Keneally was sold. Accompanying Pfefferberg to Krakow in Poland, Keneally begins stringing together the true tale of Oskar Schindler, the Nazi businessman who saved over 1,000 Jewish lives in World War II. It took Keneally 2 years to complete the novel, until it'll make a hell of a story. Is it true? The book landed on Steven Spielberg's lap. Literally.
Sid Sheinberg, the head of Universal, had a messenger come over to my house with this review of Schindler's List, and I read it, and I found it very compelling.
Raised as an Orthodox Jew, the story resonated with Steven.
And when I read the book in 1982 by Thomas Keneally, it was something that occurred to me that I could pass along to my children through what I do best, which is telling stories on film.
And yet I wasn't really ready in my own life because I was making movies about extraterrestrials and movies about, Indiana Jones and sharks
and perhaps hadn't come to terms with his own heritage at that stage.
Growing up in an Orthodox Jewish house where my parents were indirectly affected by the Holocaust,
I was the object of a lot of discrimination because I was the only Jew in Scottsdale, Arizona.
I was the only Jew in the neighborhood, the only Jew in the elementary school, and I had problems. I was different in that way.
And so Steven wasn't quite ready. He had some growing up to do. The Sid Sheinberg saw Steven's temptation, and in no time, Universal owned the rights to Schindler's Ark. 1983. Steven Spielberg meets Poldek Pfefferberg, the survivor responsible for sharing the Schindler story. Please, when are you starting? Poldek questioned. Steven had an answer. 10 years from now. It was true. He was not prepared for the film yet. And in favor of box office entertainers, he kept pushing it back. Over the next decade, he tried handing the film off several times. Roman Polanski, survivor of the Holocaust, rejects Spielberg's offer, reluctant to relive the experience. Steven successfully swaps Schindler's List with Scorsese's Cape Fear.
Schindler's List was on the table, and then you sort of looked at it and developed it, and all of a sudden Steven realized that, man, he wanted it, so he brought it back.
Before quickly regretting his decision.
I was offered to probably try to do Schindler's List, and then during the process I realized, that this is really his passion. This is something he's got to go through.
Non è che non ci voleva andare lui, ovviamente, era un bel casino. Assurdo che Polanski pure.
Pazzesco.
Sarebbe stato una follia Schindler's List diretto da Polanski.
No, ma è assurdo che lui ti dica 10 anni da adesso non sono ancora pronto, effettivamente è uscito 10 anni dopo.
10 anni dopo,
cioè
sì.
Incredibile come lucidità, consapevolezza.
Ma poi il pianista è di Polanski, no?
Sì, mi sembra di sì.
Ed è successivo, molto successivo, mi sa che è del 2000.
Sì, secondo me esatto.
Quindi poi alla fine lui ci è andato in mezzo a sta cosa, però in maniera completamente diversa. Cioè immaginati Schindler's List però con i toni del pianista, sarebbe stata una roba di tipo di una potenza fortissima. Sì. Però forse anche mancando un po' di umanità, no? Cioè l'umanità che ci mette poi Spielberg, la bambina col cappotto rosso, quelle piccole. Poi io non sono un mega fan di Schindler's List, cioè perché è un film che ho visto 1 milione di volte, lo so a memoria, ogni volta al giorno della memoria. No, in realtà sì, sono un mega fan di Schindler's List. Però vabbè sì, è un film back, cioè nel senso il punto è che è un film che è come lo stesso discorso di Hitchcock, cioè è un film così importante o comunque che ha avuto un impatto così forte che poi tutti i film successivi te lo ricordano, tutti i film sull'Olocausto, e quindi diventa anche un po' un cliché.
Sì, certo.
Cioè ci sono una marea di cose in quel film che ormai sono dei cliché, ma perché quando l'ha fatto non lo erano, ovviamente.
Chiaro. Con il momento in cui butti giù quella porta e poi qualcun altro la apre e il richiamo è sempre un po' quella roba là. Cioè è anche difficile staccarsi, secondo me, per un regista che vuole riraccontare una storia in quel mondo lì, nel momento in cui è stato fatto, secondo me, messa una pietra miliare così importante nella narrazione su quegli eventi. Diventa difficilotto staccarsi da quelle robe.
Sì, infatti però poi l'hanno fatto tutti,
effettivamente,
esatto. Senza staccarsi, ma vabbè, vediamo che dice.
Steven couldn't stall any longer. With the idea of the aging Pfefferberg not living to see the film, Spielberg's guilty conscience fires Schindler's List into pre-production.
I went to Krakow and spent time there, and more than anything else, that transported me into such an urgency to get the story out.
After a decade of growth, Spielberg was finally ready to tell Oskar Schindler's story. But Universal president Sid Sheinberg had other plans. His one condition for Steven was simple. He had to make Jurassic Park first.
Initially, we were going to do all of the dinosaurs more conventionally.
And we were going to use Phil Tippett, who was considered at the time the best in stop motion.
They had the greatest animator in the world working on Jurassic Park, a man named Phil Tippett.
It's all for you, Steven, because we love dinosaurs.
When Jurassic Park was greenlit, the method for bringing the prehistoric to life were the traditional effects Spielberg grew up on.
The same way that Willis O'Brien made King Kong. I look at King Kong and I say, well, that is the state of the art.
But stop motion has its flaws.
We had done many, many tests. We had gotten it to where it looked good enough. Not great, but good enough. 1933 was the state of the art. In between 1933 and today, there have not been any real advancements.
Well, then Dennis comes in and to a meeting and said,
you know, I really think we should do this in the computer.
We think we can do this in the computer.
So again, my name here is Dennis Muren.
Multi-Oscar-winning special effects artist Dennis Muren.
And I've been working at IOM since '76 with the first Star Wars.
And everyone said, the computer.
Special effects guru and industry icon Dennis Muren had other plans. He wasn't certain, but he felt these dinosaurs could be the first Hollywood animals made entirely with CGI. Yet, naturally, Spielberg wasn't sure, so he said, prove it.
We didn't want the Jurassic Park dinosaurs to be Disney dinosaurs,
which is more, kind of a cartoon mindset.
If you really want to make it look convincing, you have to animate every nuance.
Behold the elephant.
Every breath, every muscle, every swallow.
These were uncharted waters, and for Steven, it brought up mixed feelings.
Your father was a computer scientist.
A computer engineer with a pocket protector.
His father was a truly brilliant computer engineer.
My dad was very practical. He wanted me in school, so if I didn't become a filmmaker, I would become a teacher.
Steven had always resisted entering his father's field, and these conversations of CGI reminded him of his hesitation towards computers, a motif echoed in the movie.
I hate computers.
But Steven chose not to worry about the technicalities. After all, his field was in storytelling. When discussing the movie with Spielberg, author Michael Crichton couldn't shake his doubts towards the special effects. Spielberg simply responded with, "Effects are only as good as the audience's feeling for the characters." In a way, this thought was liberating. It wasn't ILM, the hardware, or the effects. The onus was on him to really sell Jurassic Park. After 10 years of waiting and Jurassic Park's photography finally behind him, Schindler's List began shooting in Krakow on March 1st, 1993. Refusing any of the blood money salary, Steven Spielberg arrived in Poland with a different approach to filmmaking.
He said, I've just directed Jurassic Park, everything's storyboarded to the nth degree, this is the opposite.
I wanted the experience to be a personal experience.
Che è un po' la stessa cosa che è successa a Quaron dopo Gravity, perché anche lì c'erano effetti speciali enormi, paragonabili tranquillamente a Jurassic Park, perché in entrambi i casi era super sperimentale, no? E quindi il film successivo, in questo caso proprio il film contemporaneo in realtà, però nel caso di Quaron successivo, che era Roma, zero storyboard, sceneggiatura sì, perché comunque qui era ispirato a un libro, nel caso di Quaron era ispirato alla sua stessa vita,
autobiografico.
Però sì, secondo me c'è anche qui un punto di incontro in realtà tra Roma di Quaron e Schindler'S di Spielberg in questo.
Certo, perché comunque c'è una dimensione iperpersonale anche in Spielberg nel raccontare Schindler's List, per quanto non sia esattamente la sua storia.
No, ma tra l'altro ora lo dice che quanto perché ci ha messo un botto di tempo anche a entrare proprio in quel mondo ed è stato bruttissimo comunque, pesante.
He said to me, I'm shooting this, I've made no storyboards. He was allowing himself to be inventive on the day.
To him, Schindler's List had to be made like no other film he'd made before, starting by draining the color.
The entire Second World War is black and white because I was brought up watching black and white documentaries.
Inspired by Showa, he also took a documentarian approach with the camera.
I wanted the camera to sort of be invisible, and to do that, I took what I call news camera approach.
Learning computer science on Brilliant.org means going beyond code to explore concepts like how a neural...
Making the film meant recreating some of history's darkest moments.
All peaceful means were utilized in order to save the peace of the world. Germany has reduced them to nothing.
Germany has invaded Poland. For a catastrophe that will cause untold suffering.
Schindler's List is more explicit and more graphic.
My stomach turned right over.
Than anything
Non conoscete niente di Bannone.
È
un film. Sì, no, quello che non squadra bene.
terrifying at times.
While Jurassic Park wasn't exactly finished.
Now I'm in Krakow making Schindler's List, and 5 days a week I'm doing a huge teleconference. It was a whiplash transition, so they could be in real time delivering the digital dinosaurs, so we could then critique the lighting and the physical movement. A very, very dark, important historical journey. And a popcorn audience digital dinosaur movie. And to have to come home every single night and watch dinosaurs was a living hell for me. 4 days for me that were so unbearable. I didn't want to be doing Jurassic Park any longer. I was done with Jurassic Park.
Nei giorni di shooting di Schindler'S tornava a casa e doveva vedere come stavano vivendo i dinosauri.
Put on your yarmulke, here comes Hanukkah.
He was shooting Schindler's List. He left a message saying that making the movie was very depressing.
Everyone working on the film, determined to battle through, found ways to cope.
Somebody brought that song up, they had a tape of it, and that they watched that and it would help them laugh.
Oh, what a fine-looking jewel.
After all, everyone knew this was important work.
And it was quiet on the set and everybody just did their
Il
work.
tipo che ha fatto questo video adesso è fissato con Adam Sandler, poi vedremo anche un video adesso su Adam Sandler, un'altra puntata.
I'm watching a maestro recreate documentary footage, flawless.
Everybody felt that we were memorializing something. All the pain that I suffered and my crew and cast went through is nothing. It is a weekend in Miami Beach compared to 1 day in the life of any survivor on any given day of the Holocaust.
After 72 challenging days on set, Schindler's List was over. Despite being one of the most painful periods of his life, Spielberg could look back on with pride, but it was time for the world to decide.
When you make movies, do you want to know what other people think of them?
I care desperately what other people think of them, and because I care so much, I sometimes hold my ears and close my eyes. I'll hide for months sometimes.
Do you think the Academy will finally give Steven Spielberg what he's deserved for too many years, an Oscar for this one?
Well, I sincerely hope that Spielberg gets the recognition that he deserves.
Dinosaurs are coming back to life today in the new movie Jurassic Park.
Today is opening day for Jurassic Park. Steven
Spielberg's dinosaur epic is the movie to see this summer.
It was fantastic. It was so scary.
Jurassic Park is going to be a box office hit.
$50 million.
$900 million.
Now get ready for Jurassic Park merchandise.
Jurassic will be the biggest picture of all time.
Tonight we begin with a movie you have not seen, but a movie that some of you may have survived.
The movie is Schindler's List. Schindler's List, there are no dinosaurs, only ghosts. 6 million of them.
Was hat Sie besonders ergriffen? Ich hat sehr ergriffen, wie getrennt von die Familie, die Kinder, von den Eltern, mit den Frauen.
I'm really happy I'm able to say, to admit that I've made a picture that's better than anything else I think I've ever made.
Ja, also ich bin erschüttert, ne? Ich bin vollkommen fertig.
Ich kann jetzt nicht sagen. Es war einfach unglaublich.
Would you like to win an Oscar as a director?
Does it bother you that you've never won an Oscar as Best Director? No, honestly, I'm not bothered that I haven't won an Oscar because, frankly, there's still time, perhaps someday, to win one.
Arts and Sciences presents Oscars, the 66th Annual Academy Awards.
It's 1994. Jurassic Park and Schindler's List have had their box office runs, but now it's award season. Spielberg's films are nominated for a combined 15 Oscars, but there were no guarantees. He just had the most difficult year of his career. But how would the critics feel?
Welcome to Oscar 66.
And the Oscar goes to Alan Starsky for Schindler's List and for set decoration, Ewa Braun.
Thank you, Steven Spielberg.
And the Oscar goes to Dennis Muren
Stan Winston, Phil Tippett, and Michael Lanterry for Jurassic Park.
Thanks, ILM. Thanks, Tippett. The Oscar goes to Gary Wrightstrom and Richard Hims, Jurassic Park.
We'd also like to thank Steven Spielberg.
The Oscar goes to Gary Summers, Gary Wrightstrom, Sean Murphy, and Ron Judkins for Jurassic Park.
And of course, it's Steven Spielberg who made it all possible.
And the Oscar goes to John Williams for Schindler's List.
Steven Spielberg. Thank you.
The Oscar winner and my new best friend is Janusz Kaminski for Schindler's List.
All my friends and supporters, thank you.
And the Oscar goes to Michael Kahn for Schindler's
The process was painful, but the result was glorious. I want to thank you, Steve, for the most fulfilling time of my life.
There were no two ways about it. Steven's films were sweeping up. But he had his eye on one award in particular, one that he'd never won before.
The Oscar goes to, this is a big surprise, Steven Spielberg for Schindler's List.
I have friends who have won this before. This is the first time I've ever had one of these in my hand. So, never could have gotten started without a survivor named Poldek Pfefferberg. I want to thank my wife, who's here with me tonight, for rescuing me 92 days in a row when things got just too unbearable. And my mom, who's here, who is my lucky charm, whom I love very, very much. And to the 6 million who can't be watching this among the 1 billion watching this telecast tonight. Thank you.
It was a touching moment for Steven, a moment he dreamed of for decades. There was one more award to be announced, and it could close off the night perfectly.
And the Oscar for the Best Picture of 1993 goes to Schindler's List. Steven Spielberg, Gerald Molan, and Branko Liswick produced it.
Oh wow! This is the best drink of water after the longest drought in my life.
The accomplishment of a lifetime.
Schindler's List was the experience of my motion picture life. The sad thing is for me, I don't know what I'm going to do next. You know, between Schindler's List and Jurassic Park, I'm going to need years of therapy. Enough said. Thank you very much.
Mi sa che poi l'ha usata come tesi di laurea. Poi comunque big up per Dodford, sempre on point i suoi video esseri.
Mamma mia, stupendo questo.
Poi montaggio
fighissimo.
E lui poi alla fine, Spielberg, se non sbaglio, si è laureato, cioè ha usato Schindler's List come tesi di laurea all'AFI. Cioè o comunque, gli hanno dato una specie di laurea d'onore per Schindler's List.
No, pazzesco, cioè è verissima la roba che dice alla fine quando ritira il premio per miglior film, cioè quando hai messo così tanto, hai aspettato così tanto per vincere, vinci col film che forse è il più significativo della tua carriera rispetto a tutto quello che c'è stato prima e a tutto quello che farai dopo. Veramente, come fai a dire ora cosa faccio? Cioè, ho fatto l'anno più folle della mia vita, ho vinto tutto.
Cosa ha fatto dopo?
Dopo avrà fatto... ha fatto gli altri Jurassic Park. Ah no, ha fatto Salvate il soldato Ryan nel 98.
Ok.
Perché poi quello dopo Schindler'S è stato fermo per 4 anni fino a quando ha fatto il secondo Jurassic Park.
Cos'è Amistad?
Amistad è quello...
sulla barca.
Sì, è presente. Ispirato al romanzo di Barbara Chase Reboot, La rivolta dell'Amistad, per quel caso giudiziario seguito al ammutinamento.
Figo, me lo devo vedere.
Figo.
Mi piacciono i film sugli ammutinamenti.
Bellissimo.